Hello. So today I want to talk to you about a topic that is quite difficult for me to talk about. Not because of anything other than the fact that I'm not a medical doctor, not a medical professional. I don't understand most of what I'll be talking to you about today. So take it with a teaspoonful of salt. Do your own reading. Do your own research. Hopefully this will just set you on your way to it. So I want to talk to you about the safety of the COVID-19 vaccine. Let's take a look at the paper that was just published on August 25th, 2021 in the New England Journal of Medicine. I'll be leaving links to all of these papers in the description down below where you should comment. This paper came by a request from one of the viewers. I wanted to do this for myself, but since there was a single request for me to review this, well, sure, why not? Let's do this today. So this turned out to be a very difficult article for me to read, not because of anything else, but I had to Google every other term. Lots of Googling, but that's okay, Google can handle it. So this particular paper is on the safety of BNT162b2 mRNA COVID-19 vaccine nationwide setting. Scientists. So this is the legal name for this vaccine. We know it as BioNTech, Fosun Pharma, Pfizer. So BioNTech Pfizer vaccine. And it's a COVID vaccine that's been recently authorized by the Food and Drug Administration and recommended by the CDC for use in the United States for a limited population. Not sure what that limit is. Didn't Google that part, sorry. But the research name for this vaccine is BNT162b2. It's an mRNA vaccine, and administration method is shot in the muscle of the upper arm. By the way, yellow highlights and this big red ugly letters, those are added by me, not by the authors. The journal uses this beautiful font, and it's an amazing journal. In this paper, the authors, and by the way, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 12 pretty distinguished authors, MDs, PhDs, and one of them is with a bachelor's. But these are a dozen, literally a dozen of high-ranking individuals that perform this work, and a substantial work this is. The authors use data from the largest healthcare organization in Israel. This is limited to Israel, to evaluate the safety of the BioNTech vaccine. You'll see that I have very large sections of this highlighted. It's all important. I think you should download this paper and read it by yourself after we're done talking about this. And we might be talking about this for a while because I have whole thing covered in yellow. So you'll see. It's very important. Every single word here is important. This is something that you're going to inject yourself with that has been engineered to fight COVID. You know, my own story, myself and my wife, we are vaccinated double dose with Moderna vaccine. We got that vaccine as soon as we were able to. We were on a waiting list at a local medical facility. We were lucky enough to get vaccinated just a couple of days apart. I was first, my wife was second. My reaction was a little bit of a pain for about a day, which disappeared in a couple of days, and there was very mild redness. My wife, just about the same. My business partner, he took a couple of days off. He was a little bit under the weather, but in general, we took the vaccine pretty well. Now that was Moderna. This is the Pfizer BioNTech vaccine. This study is amazing to me. They analyzed almost 1 million people in each vaccinated and control group. They compare 1 million vaccinated people to 1 million, almost 1 million, non-vaccinated people. And what they find could sound scary at first, but bear with me. So what they find is there is an increase. Vaccination leads to elevated risk of myocarditis, lymphadenopathy. Not a medical doctor. These are hard for me to pronounce. Sorry about that. And appendicitis and herpes zoster infection. I had to look all of those up. Myocarditis, inflammation of the middle layer of the heart wall. Well, that sounds pretty nasty. And in fact it is. But there are a lot of details later in the paper. We'll talk about them. Lymphadenopathy, swollen lymph nodes. That doesn't sound very bad. Lymph nodes are these globs of immune cells all over your body. Swollen lymph nodes, and what? Again, that doesn't sound like a big deal, and they explain later in the paper that it isn't much of a big deal. Appendicitis? This is your appendix thing, inflamed appendix. Apparently, there are a few cases of increased rate of appendicitis amongst those who were vaccinated. And this herpes zoster infection apparently is shingles. So the little I read about this is a reactivation of the chickenpox virus in the body, causing a painful rash. If you had chickenpox, there is a small chance that it will be reactivated by this vaccination. At least that's the way I understood what I read. Please do your own reading. I'm an engineer. Yes, a bioengineer, but my focus is plasma, electric discharges. My focus is electric discharges in their application in cleaning wastewater. I don't understand what I'm reading, but I'm trying. And I'm trying to share it with you. So anyway, SARS-CoV-2 infection, as compared to vaccination, was associated with substantial increased risk of the same myocarditis. And of course, the additional serious adverse events, including pericarditis, arrhythmia, deep vein thrombosis, pulmonary embolism, myocardial infarction, and other things, including death, right? So it's like a bad thing. Anyway, conclusion, and remember, medical journals tend to put the whole paper in the first page: background, methods, results, and conclusion. So in conclusion, this nationwide study, nation here being the nation of Israel. So in Israel, the mass vaccination using their vaccine was not really associated with elevated risk of most of the adverse events examined. Myocarditis, which is pretty nasty, was 1 to 5 events per 100,000 persons. So it's a pretty low risk. Still, this is not a very pleasant condition to have. And of course, the risk of nastier things significantly increased after the SARS-CoV-2 infection. Now that we know the summary of the study, you can quit now or stick with me to look at the actual data. It's pretty important, pretty interesting. Let's take a look. According to this paper, by the time that they wrote this, about 3.4 billion doses of vaccine have been administered. This is impressive. This is a worldwide effort, and I applaud all the scientists and all the corporations that put out. Yes, of course they made money from this, but this is an insane effort. This is overtime work for thousands of people. This effort is amazing, and I applaud everyone who participated in this. But anyway, congrats guys, great job, awesome, vaccine works. You know, what we were looking at before were phase 3 trials. Phase 3 trials that the vaccines have undergone to get the emergency use authorization here in the US, they're pretty limited. There's a small number of participants, and typically these participants tend to be healthier than average population. The authors observed this vaccine adverse event reporting system, VAERS, safety platform for emergency vaccines, SPEAK, biologics effectiveness and safety best system, and others to gather and monitor data. As of May 24th, almost 5 million people in Israel, comprising more than 55% of the population, have received both doses of Pfizer BioNTech, which is amazing, and this data is accessible to the researchers. In this study, they compared the incidence of a broad set of potential short and medium-term adverse events among vaccinated persons with the incidence among matched unvaccinated individuals. So they compare short and medium-term adverse events. They only look at 42 days. So they look after your second vaccination. I believe it's second vaccination. But anyway, they look at 42 days. This is not a long-term study. This does not study whether this vaccine affects your children's children. It only studies adverse effects to you right now. That's the limitation of the current study. We need to observe these things for many years. But look, it helps us fight SARS-CoV-2. So it's pretty impressive. The data that the researchers analyzed was obtained from Clalit Health Services, CHS. This is an Israeli insurer that covers approximately 52% of the total population of Israel, or over 4.7 million people. The authors claim that this is representative of the Israeli population at large, and I tend to agree because it's 52%. It better be. This study excluded anybody with a previous diagnosis. So if you were diagnosed with deep vein thrombophlebitis, you were excluded from this study. If you had any kind of pre-existing condition, I believe you were excluded from the study. So the study is a little bit biased to 16-year-olds and older that were reasonably healthy before getting the vaccine. And the study compares them with those who have not received the vaccine, and also with those who have gotten infected with SARS-CoV-2. In this study, the authors tried to match as best as they could, and I'll show you this in a table later on, the unvaccinated individual to the vaccinated individual to a similar individual who has gotten SARS-CoV-2. And I love this part. All the authors designed the study and critically reviewed the manuscript. The first three authors collected and analyzed the data. A subgroup of authors wrote the manuscript. The last author, typically the last author is the boss of the study. The last author vouches for the accuracy and completeness of the data and for the fidelity of the study to the protocol. Last author. This guy, Ron Balisser. I happened to look him up. Chief Innovation Officer at Clalit Health Services and Founding Director, Clalit Research Institute. He is a big deal. And to say that he is vouching for the study, what were the exact words? The last author vouches for the accuracy and completeness of the data and for fidelity of the study to the protocol. Wow. Let's look at his career. Not only is he a TEDx speaker, so he's been with Clalit for 14 years, Ministry of Health Israel, 17 years, Lancet and Financial Times Commissioner, Founding Director, Clalit Research Institute. So he is the director of Clalit Research Institute inside of this Clalit Health Services that insures 52% of Israel. This is an important study, and he's been a full professor at Ben Gurion University of the Negev. Impressive, quite impressive. Educated at Tel Aviv University with MD in medicine, Ben Gurion University, Public Health, Johns Hopkins. And one before that, Ben Gurion University. Fantastic. This guy, to me, this guy is legit. And I trust when he says that he vouches for the accuracy of the study. There was a comment previously whether to trust or not trust some people. This is the person I would trust. Putting one's career on the line, publishing in the New England Journal of Medicine, and vouching for your data is big deal. To me it is. But anyway, let's take a look at the rest of the paper. And what I would like to do right now is go over the images. First of all, study population for the vaccination analysis. They take 3.5 million participants, remove healthcare workers, look at whether they're vaccinated or not. No, they're excluded. They're included in a control group. Yes, they go through selection criteria, weeding out not perfect matches, and they create 1-to-1 match of 884,828 individuals in a vaccinated group and the same number in an unvaccinated group. So this is almost 2 million people we're looking at, which is extremely impressive for me. From the data science perspective, this should give interesting statistics, but this is a complex situation we're dealing with. So let's take a look, and I'll go over some details later on. Baseline characteristics of the study. Oh boy. So they have vaccination analysis and SARS-CoV-2 analysis. In the vaccination analysis, they have the vaccinated group and a control group, million in each. SARS-CoV-2 analysis, they have 173,106 individuals who were infected with SARS-CoV-2, and a control group. If we look at the median age, about 38 years old, in the SARS-CoV-2 group, it's 34 years old. So it's a little bit different population, tiny bit different, which could be cause of some errors down the line, but it's pretty comparable as far as I'm concerned. They have this many individuals in each of the age groups. They're looking at 16 to 39, 40 to 49, 50, 60, 70s, and over 80. The largest group is 16 to 40, with almost 500,000 individuals in each and 100,000 infected and control groups. About half and half, 48% female, 52% male, 54% female, 46% male. This is, to me, this is reasonable. Ideally, of course, this is 400 million and 50-50. That's not the case here, but close enough as far as I'm concerned. Population sector, well, this doesn't apply to America at all, right? So this is in Israel. So their population is generally Jewish, 600,000, ultra-Orthodox Jewish, 24,000, and Arabs, about 264,000 and 61,000 in the COVID group. Number of risk factors, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. The split, also pretty evenly split among the groups. And certain risk criteria, cancer, chronic kidney disease, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, etc. Smoking, wow, 157 to 87. There's a discrepancy, so I guess more smokers in the control group. Interesting. I thought I read early on that smokers survive SARS-CoV-2 better, but forget it. It was 2 years ago. And the possible risk criteria like asthma, cerebrovascular disease, etc. The split looks to me pretty darn good. So they were able to take their 2 million participants and split them into bins based on age, based on pre-existing condition, risk criteria, etc. Very fantastic. Oh, there's some more diseases. BMI 25 to 30, so overweight people, about even split. A few more, 3,000 more overweight people in the infected versus control group. But anyway, it's interesting to me that the split between vaccinated and control and SARS-CoV-2 and control is pretty even across the board. I would tend to better trust this type of data. This table is interesting. Adverse effects associated with SARS-CoV-2 vaccination. Okay. Acute kidney injury, number of persons, number of events in vaccinated group, number of events in control group. This is acute kidney injury occurring after vaccination. Anemia after vaccination. Vaccinated group 298, control group 378. So there's more in the control group, which to me means there's no correlation. We will talk about adverse events that have correlation, but here is everything they tested. Like this enlarged lymph nodes, we have 660 in the vaccinated group and 279 in the control group. So those who received the vaccine had a pretty significantly higher incidence of swollen lymph nodes over those in the control group. But look, control group, there's almost 300, and swollen lymph nodes increases to 600. You realize that after you get the vaccine, you're all freaked out about it, and you're kind of like feeling yourself and checking for headache, and you're more likely to report headache. So thing like swollen lymph nodes is a little vague, at least for me. And again, I am not a medical professional. I'm thinking about myself. And if I think I have a swollen lymph node, I wouldn't care if I didn't get vaccinated, and if I had a jab a couple of days ago and I think I have a swollen lymph node, well, of course I would attribute it to the vaccination. I'm a human, so I make self-diagnosis all the time. But here is everything that was tested. Next, we look at the study population for the SARS-CoV-2 analysis. Very similar to the study population for vaccinated and unvaccinated people. They took 3.5 million participants. Those are members of this health system. And they look, are you positive or not for the SARS-CoV-2 before May 24, 2021? Yes, we select. No, we use you as control group. And they end up, and please download the paper, look at the details. I won't go into them. They're very interesting. There's a lot of them. This is massive amount of data here. So they end up with 173,000 of SARS-CoV-2 positive and 173,000 of non-infected. So they're comparing SARS-CoV-2 to not SARS-CoV-2. The difference here being it's 4 times less persons used in this study. And then we look at risk ratio for adverse events after vaccination or SARS-CoV-2 infection. So we're comparing risks of adverse events after vaccination compared to risk of adverse events after SARS-CoV-2 infection. If we look at acute kidney injury, SARS-CoV-2 wins by a factor of 30. Appendicitis looks about the same. Arrhythmia wins by a factor of 3. Deep vein thrombosis wins by a factor of 3, give or take. Herpes zoster infection, that's that, what was it? Yeah, shingles. So shingles. We have the winner, which is vaccinated people, but it's almost within error range. Intracranial hemorrhage, that one sounds great. And the winner is SARS-CoV-2. The swollen lymph nodes, all right, fine. Factor round 3. The winner is vaccinated people. I'll go check for swollen lymph nodes now. Maybe I have them too, even though it's been like 2 months since I got vaccinated. Myocardial infarction. Again, we have a different winner. Myocarditis, it's within error, at least for me. Pericarditis, not a clear winner, within error range, but still looks a little higher. And pulmonary embolism, winner by a factor of 10. If you ask me, just as I'm commenting as a human being, looking at this, you're comparing risks of adverse effects. One is missing here is death. But besides that, vaccinated people versus SARS-CoV-2 infection, it's pretty clear to me. Here we look at the absolute excess risk of various adverse events after vaccination or SARS-CoV-2 infection. Pretty much the same thing we just looked at. plotted differently, and orange is risk difference per 10,000 persons infected with SARS-CoV-2. Blue, or whatever this color is, teal, risk difference for vaccinated individuals. Clear winner, no comment. Clear winner, clear winner. Huh, this herpes zoster, shingles, okay. Winner, not a clear winner, just a winner. Clear winner, lymph nodes. But then there were 4 times more participants in this study, so question. Winner, 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 winner. Looking at this table, noting that one of the side effects of SARS-CoV-2 is death, I would say I'm glad I got vaccinated, and I suggest the same thing for you. Just this. But let's keep looking. So let's quickly try to go through my massive amounts of yellow highlights, see if there's anything really adverse events of interest. So the authors did exclude mild adverse events such as fever. That was excluded. And my business partner Charles, he did have a fever, I believe, after his vaccination. Malaise, I had to look that one up. Malaise, a general sense of being unwell, often accompanied by fatigue, diffuse pain, or lack of interest in activities. That's me on a rainy Sunday. But okay. And local injection site reactions were not included in this study. Well, good. Total of 42 days was deemed to be sufficient for identifying medium-term adverse events without being so long as to dilute the incidence of short-term adverse events. So this study only looks at major problems, medium to major problems occurring to you within 42 days of vaccination. What happens in 10 years? Nobody knows. What happens in 100 years? Nobody knows. This isn't the study. The study looked at massively bad things happening to you because of vaccination and comparing it to much more massively bad things happening to you because of SARS-CoV-2. As far as I'm concerned, this study had accomplished it. Yep, and it's compared to SARS-CoV-2 infected patients. By the way, this is a good point. This isn't a very large study. To me, a couple of million people is a lot, but this isn't that big. The effects of vaccination and SARS-CoV-2 infection were estimated with different cohorts. Thus, they should be treated as separate sets of results rather than directly compared. And we shouldn't directly compare them. I did it just now, but they are disparate sets. They're different. Draw your own conclusions. They make an interesting side note that the 21 persons with myocarditis in the vaccinated group, median age was 25 and 90% were male. So Pfizer BioNTech affects 21 out of 100,000 young males. Not good. Not terrible, because they don't die, but this is a problem. AstraZeneca had its own problems with women, I guess. These are vaccines. You're injecting yourself with an engineered molecule that's designed to help your immune system recognize an actual virus. In a small number of cases, there are adverse events. For me, the number of these cases reported in this study isn't enough to advise to not vaccinate. Matter of fact, I'm advising to yes vaccinate, solely based on this paper. The authors do go into limitations of this study. It's many limitations. The study is too small. The persons were not randomly assigned according to exposures. They were comparing SARS-CoV-2 to vaccination, to not vaccination. Matching process was tough. It's not 100 million, it's not 1 billion people. It's a measly 2 million people study, which to me is big enough. But yes, it is a limitation. This isn't a perfect study. It isn't complete. That's not going to happen for the next 10 years. Healthcare workers and persons residing in long-term care facilities, they were excluded, so that's a study limitation. But in general, I think the study is pretty flawless. Although the general risks of hospitalization, severe disease, and death from COVID-19 are widely recognized, secondary complications of infection are less well known. Therefore, in this analysis, we sought to estimate the effects of SARS-CoV-2 infection on the incidence of the same list of adverse events examined in the vaccination analysis. To summarize this study compares healthy individuals who got the vaccine, who remained generally healthy afterwards, who did not get hospitalized. They didn't die. They were generally healthy, but a few of them got, swollen lymph nodes. Did they get swollen lymph nodes after vaccination? Yes, they did. They were reported, carefully documented. Did they die or go on a ventilator? No, they didn't. That's the difference to me. Another challenge in this study is interesting. When a person decides to become vaccinated, this choice results in a probability of 100% for the vaccination because they got vaccinated. Whereas the alternative of contracting SARS-CoV-2 infection is an event with uncertain probability. It depends on the person, the place, and the time. Moreover, infection with SARS-CoV-2 has many other adverse effects beyond those considered here, including the risk of transmission to family members and others. Haha. So if you don't get vaccinated, you get the disease, you're able to transmit it. Whoops, that's not good. And finally, the authors conclude, we estimated that the BioNTech vaccine resulted in an increased incidence of a few adverse events over the 42-day follow-up period. Although most of these events were mild, some of them, such as myocarditis, could be potentially serious. Yes, so to answer the comment from a couple of videos ago, do I recommend vaccination? Well, I'm vaccinated, my wife is vaccinated, everybody at my office are vaccinated, my parents are vaccinated. I highly recommend it. It slows down the spread of the disease. It makes sure that this nasty bugger stays out of our lives. Follow the CDC guidelines. My own experience with Food and Drug Administration is the scrutiny that they have put our company through is enormous. Everyone I know working on an FDA approval of anything suffers for months and months and months, if not years, providing FDA with flawless data sufficiently demonstrating safety and efficacy of their product. After having worked with FDA during attempting to get our product approved, I can vouch that the FDA process is extremely careful. At this point, I trust everything FDA approves because I've tried and failed to get something approved. It is an extremely complex process, and even though it sucks to not get your product approved, I'm happy at the way, the scrutiny which FDA applies to every application that goes through. So bottom line, I highly recommend getting vaccinated. In US, follow CDC guidelines on whether to or not to wear masks. Stay safe, stay healthy. We'll get through this. It's almost over. Guarantee you. Peace, guys. Take care.